Can you hear me well? Am I speaking too loudly? So, hi, my name is Brianna Damron. Like he said, I'm a nursing student at the University of Kentucky, and I've also been interning with the Urban Forest Initiative for about a year and a half now. Does anybody here know what the Urban Forest Initiative is? Can you raise your hand? Okay, if you're in it, you don't count. Okay, well, some of you do. Essentially, the Urban Forest Initiative is a really cool working group in Lexington that strives to elevate the function, value, and perception of urban forests through things like education and service events and things like that. It's really neat. So I've been with them for a year and a half. And tonight, I'm going to be talking to you guys about nature therapy, its real-world implications, and how human health and conservation are inextricably linked. Yes. Whew. So this is me. If I had to simplify my character into a couple words, I think tree lover and student nurse would be pretty accurate. I started nursing school about the same time that I started working with the forestry department, and initially these two aspects of my life never really interacted. I spent my time as a student nurse learning about physical assessments and how to engage in therapeutic communication with my clients. And I spent my time in the forestry department doing things like surveying tree health on campus and coordinating mulching events. However, as I became more immersed in my respective fields, the link between them became more and more apparent. So with the support of my wonderful team, the Urban Forest Initiative, I was awarded a Sustainability and Creativity Fellowship grant this past summer, and I was able to launch a project that kind of tied these two disciplines together. So this summer, I created a series of tree walks across UK's campus for the purposes of facilitating mindfulness, stress reduction, and education. These walks are available to students and staff, as well as to hospital visitors and staff. I chose areas on campus that were especially well-treed, and recorded short guided meditations to accompany each of these walks. The meditations offer up scientific information about the trees, as well as offer up an opportunity for people to practice mindfulness. So these are just 4 pictures from the 4 walks that I have on campus. And here's a link to the website if you're interested in going on a tree walk. The audio is finally up on the website, and it's super great. And if you want to ask me any questions about my project after my presentation, I would love to do that. In addition, this website is really cool because it shows a lot of work that the Urban Forest Initiative is doing outside of my project. So there's things like tree stories, a list of events, and an interactive tree map on campus, which I think is awesome. Okay, so now that I've introduced you guys to who I am and my project, I would like to spend a little time discussing the research. So has anybody here ever heard of forest bathing? Raise your hand. Oh, a lot of you. Nice. So forest bathing is also called Shinrin-yoku, and it started out as a phenomenon in Japan a little over a decade ago and has since been gaining traction all around the world. Several studies have been conducted in Japan to examine its health benefits, taking into consideration central nervous activity, autonomic nervous activity, and stress biomarkers such as cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone that is released from your adrenal glands in response to stress. It stimulates something called gluconeogenesis, which essentially gives your body a bunch of free glucose to respond to the fight or flight situations. So cortisol can be especially useful in acutely stressful situations, but can be harmful if prolonged and elevated for a prolonged period of time. So unfortunately, in our highly stressed society, people produce a lot more cortisol than we probably need. One of my favorite pieces of data from the forest bathing research is pictured up on the slide, and it deals with cortisol. So this study is essentially looking at 2 different groups of people, one interacting with a city environment and one with a forested area. The bar on the left shows how cortisol levels naturally increase in the morning And that's so you can wake up and start your day and get going. And throughout the day, they gradually decrease until the evening when the cortisol levels are at their lowest, and that kind of prepares your body to go to sleep. So there's supposed to be this natural decline throughout the day. The main point of this graph is to illustrate how cortisol functions between waking and sleeping hours, and it depends on the environment that we're in. So cortisol levels not only decreased after walking in a forested area, but also just by viewing pictures of a forested area. Do you guys feel relaxed right now? The same cannot be said of a city environment. Those who spend time walking in the forest or viewing the forest show statistically significant differences in cortisol levels compared to the city group. One of the ways that people have started incorporating elements of Shinrin-yoku into everyday life is through something called healing gardens. These gardens have been popping up all over the world, particularly in hospitals, because they help reduce not only mental stress, but physical stress as well. So being in a healing garden has been proven to decrease hospitalization stays, as well as increase recovery rates. There's also emerging evidence that suggests that these gardens can help those working in healthcare to avoid burnout, which is an extremely common phenomenon in the healthcare field. So that's very, very important, and it has also been shown to increase job satisfaction. So healing gardens mimic the principles of Shinrin-yoku by employing the senses. Healing gardens are designed to engage people year-round, primarily through the use of color and scent, as well as by providing quiet refuge for those who are seeking it. Incorporation of these gardens has been shown to decrease blood pressure, pulse rate, heart rate variability, prefrontal cortex activity, and again, stress markers such as cortisol. So all of these things combined are inevitably going to lead to the development of a healthier life. So now you might be thinking, how does all of this tie into conservation? Well, I'll tell you. Simply put, the answer is deep ecology. This is different, I think, from the stereotypical view of conservation, which I believe relies a little more strongly on superficial ecology. And I believe that this quote really does a great job at highlighting the differences between those. So I'd like to take a moment to just read it because it's like my favorite quote of all time. It says, "The extensive moralizing within the environmental movement has given the public the false impression that we primarily ask them to sacrifice, to show more responsibility, more concern, better morals. As I see it, we need the immense variety of joy, open through sensitivity, through richness and diversity of life, and the landscapes of free nature. The requisite care flows naturally if the self is widened and deepened, so that the protection of free nature is felt and conceived as protection of ourselves." Isn't that beautiful? So my hope for the continuation of nature therapy research mirrors the hope that I have for my tree walk project. I want people to be able to form a stronger relationship with their natural environment, to know that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves, and to take care of the environment as we take care of ourselves. So I would like to end my talk like how I end all of my tree walks on campus, and that is with a final meditation. The picture in front of you was taken at the University of Kentucky Arboretum, so this is something that you guys can access, and if you're feeling stressed out, go to the Arboretum and look at the trees. So I'd like for you all to imagine yourself inside of this picture, and if you feel comfortable, I would like you to close your eyes and focus on your breath. It can be easy to travel absent-mindedly through the natural environment. We are often in a hurry to get to our next destination, and we neglect to take the time to notice something as simple as the trees. And when we do, we might think, how can I relate to something so seemingly different? As you breathe in, focus on how the air you are breathing is from the trees. Slowly exhale knowing your breath joins the atmosphere as a crucial ingredient for trees to also grow strong and beautiful. Breathe in, noticing how the trees around you stand solid and confident. As you breathe out, imagine that same confidence spreading throughout your own body. Breathe in, thinking about how these trees persevere in the often stressful urban environment. Breathe out, feeling confident in your ability to similarly thrive, even when conditions are difficult. And finally, breathe in and understand the value that trees have by virtue of simply existing. And as you breathe out, know that you are of value as well. You may open your eyes. So it can be easy to lose sight of our inherent worth as we strive for academic or career excellence, but it is important to remind ourselves of this frequently. I am capable, I am enough.